Are you getting ready for your very first hunt? Or are you buying your third pair of waders because you're sick and tired of cold, wet feet? Are you trying to wade through conflicting reviews online between every brand of wader that you look at? Well, I've spent the last 10 years hunting ducks from opening day until the end of the season, using everything from the cheap budget waders up to high-end expensive gear. There is no perfect solution, but by the end of this video, you should know what type of wader fits your hunting style and when it makes sense to buy high-end versus budget. Spoiler, most hunters prefer breathable waders, so if you already know that's what you want, jump to the next section. For the beginners though, let's dive into the difference between neoprene and breathable. Think of neoprene like a piece of thin, dense foam. It usually comes in 3 to 5 millimeter thickness for waders. Breathables, on the other hand, are more like a piece of fabric. Think of the material like a mix between a rain jacket and a canvas fabric. Picking between the two will really depend on your situation and your budget. If we assume both styles are from quality brands, here are the general pros and cons of each one. And keep in mind, there's always exceptions depending on the brand, quality, and how you personally use them. Let's start with neoprene. First, they're cheaper. Most fall into the $100 to $300 price range, which makes them a solid choice for hunters on a budget or those just getting started. Second, they're more durable. And here's what I mean by that. Neoprene is thicker, so it's less likely to get cut or torn by ice or sharp brush. The material also has a little stretch to it, and I think that it helps relieve some of the stress on the seams, meaning the seams will last longer before they start to leak. Speaking from my own experience, when I was younger, I used a pair of budget neoprenes for 3 or 4 seasons, and they were still totally fine when I bought breathables. My dad went on to use those same waders for another 8 seasons. Now, to be fair, they weren't used every day, just a handful of hunts spread out across the season, but still, they lasted. And third, they're warmer, with a few exceptions. Most neoprene waders come with insulated boots rated anywhere from 800 to 1600 grams. But when I say warmer, I'm really talking about the neoprene itself. It naturally provides more insulation than breathable waders, especially when you're standing in cold water for longer stretches. Just because the material is warmer though, doesn't mean you will stay warmer. More on that when we get to the cons. Now, let's go over the pros of breathable waders. First, they're mobile. The fabric itself doesn't stretch, but imagine wearing 1 pair of jeans versus 3 pairs of jeans at the same time. You're just going to have more mobility in the 1 pair of jeans. And breathables are typically sized to be slightly loose so that you have room to move. It's almost like wearing a baggy tracksuit. Because they're made from lightweight fabric, they move with your body. Second, they're lightweight. Combined with the mobility factor, the weight of breathable waders makes a huge difference when you have a half-mile hike or more to get to your spot. And third, they're cooler. And that's a big deal for early season hunts. Now, I'm not 100% convinced that breathable waders can actually breathe. How can fabric let moisture out while you're also standing in waist-deep water? Not sure if I'm buying that. But personal experience does tell me that breathables are significantly cooler than neoprene. I've hiked out after early season teal hunts in 90-degree weather in both breathables and neoprene, and I can tell you, it makes a huge difference. Like, I need a jug of water and I'm about to die of heat stroke with neoprene versus mild discomfort with the breathables. Moving on to the cons section. Like I just mentioned, neoprene waders are not ideal for warm weather. Additionally, they're pretty bulky and not very flexible. Especially when you add a few layers, you can start to feel like the Michelin Man waddling around. Not ideal for wading in the dark. And lastly, because they typically fall into that budget category, you won't find many neoprene waders that have fitted boots. Now when I say that, what I'm talking about is a generic rubber boot versus a high-end pair of muck boots. The higher end is going to stay on your feet much better when you're walking in the mud. Most neoprene waders will have that generic version of the boot, which I personally think is really clunky. But maybe I've just never bought the right size, who knows. Now, on to breathables. To start, they're typically more expensive, around the $250 range all the way up to even $1,000 or more. And in my experience, they don't last as long. My first pair of breathable waders only lasted me 2 seasons on average. It always seemed to me that busting ice was really hard on them. I'm talking about that 1/4-inch ice that breaks into sharp chunks when you walk through it. Another con that people mention on breathables is that they just aren't that warm. Now, I agree that the fabric itself is less warm, but again, my personal experience has been that I'm able to layer better with breathables. This means less sweat when setting up, and in the end, I usually stay much warmer. So you'll have to decide for yourself on that. Is that really a con or is it a pro? After the pros and cons, you should be able to pick what works best for you. But if you haven't decided yet, follow this general checklist to get an idea of what you need. You should buy neoprene if you are looking for low budget, or if you hunt in a lot of ice and not a lot of hot weather, or if price is more important than comfort. You should buy breathable when comfort is important, if you hunt hot weather, or if you need mobility and you do a lot of walking. Hopefully by now, it's clear which type of wader fits your hunting style, neoprene or breathable. So let's walk through how to pick the best option within each category. For neoprene, you're looking at a price range of $100 to $300, and you have some options to choose between 3 to 5 millimeter thickness of the neoprene, with 3 millimeter being better for early season, 5 millimeter being better for late season, and your boots, with around 800 grams of insulation for early season, all the way to 1600 grams of insulation for late season. Keep in mind that as you go towards the 5 millimeter thickness and the 1600 grams of insulation in the boots, you're going to have a little bit more restriction and a little bit less mobility with the waders. For neoprene waders, there's not a huge difference between different brands. They're all kind of similar, and so me personally, I would recommend going to your local sporting goods store such as Academy, Dunham's, Sportsman's Guide, Cabela's, and I would try on their store brand. I know I'm not giving a definitive pick here, but in all reality, there just isn't enough difference between neoprene waders to make anything stand out, in my opinion. You're better off trying them on in person and getting something that fits right the first time than to mess with online ordering. Find something that leaves a little room in the feet for a thicker pair of socks, but don't go too big because these boots will get stuck in the mud and pulled off of your feet pretty easily. Moving on to breathable. There are a ton of brands and options. My big picture advice, avoid the middle of the road price range. I'm talking about that $400 to $700 pair of waders. They may be slightly better in terms of comfort than the lower price point, but all three prices will probably last the same amount of time. The big difference as you change the price range is the comfort level improves as you pay more money. And if you pay a lot of money, you can get a company that backs their gear with a decent warranty. So my recommendation is to go for the budget in breathables around the $300 range. These would be brands like Rogers, Cabela's, Tideweed, if that's how you say it. I don't personally have any of their gear. Or if you can afford it, go for high-end waders like Sitka that are going to be around that $1,000 range. Now, this recommendation might not make a ton of sense at first, so let me clear up why I think this way. I started with budget breathables. My first pair was around $200 and they lasted me 2.5 seasons. I had to buy a new pair mid-season after the first got sliced open, and my next pair of the same brand only lasted me 1.5 years before they started leaking. I bought a nicer pair of breathables with a fitted boot for my next pair, and I absolutely loved them. Walking in mud became so much easier. However, they were over $400, and you guessed it, they started leaking on my 3rd season. After that, I finally bought a pair of nice waders, and I went with Sitka. And guess what? They leaked too. I don't think it's a matter of if your waders will leak, but a matter of when. However, with my Sitka waders, I sent them in after my 2nd season because I suspected they had a very slight leak. Sitka pressure tested them, found a pinhole leak in one boot, and replaced both boots at no cost to me. Free shipping, free repair, about a month turnaround during the off-season, and I had basically new leak-free waders. I'm now going into season 4 with Sitka waders, and they are one of the best gear purchases I have ever made. So my advice to hunters looking for a new pair of breathables: if you don't want to spend a ton of money, pick up a pair of Rogers breathables in the $300 price range. Or if you have room in the budget, grab a nice pair of waders like Sitka's. Just make sure the warranty or repair process is there if you're spending close to $1,000 on a pair of waders. At the end of the day, there's no such thing as the perfect pair of waders, just the right ones for your hunting style. Whether you're grinding through late season ice or walking miles during teal opener, now you know what to look for and what to avoid. If this video was helpful, leave a comment for everyone with what waders you're using this season. I'd love to hear what's worked for you, or what's left you cold and wet one too many times. I'll catch you in the next one, and remember, dry feet equals happy hunt.